So I don't know why I have such a hard time saying this, but it's an Anycubic Kobra Go. Anyways, I wanted to talk about bed leveling and fade. Fade is not something that you find a lot of information on the web about, and I discovered that it was interfering with the accuracy of the height of the models that I was designing and printing. From the day I got this thing, it's been a roller coaster ride in the sense of the very first print was the owl, which is the Anycubic test print, and it came out incredible. I mean, the finish was just absolutely fantastic. I already have another 3D printer, and the quality of that owl that came out on this printer was fantastic. So the only thing is that whenever I was printing anything artsy, it would typically come out, you could get some incredible finishes, but the bases seemed to be weak to the point where it was very easy to split it, to put your fingernail through it, etc. And I kept on playing around with the Z-axis, trying to dial the thing in, thinking that I just don't have it right, but scratching my head because the upper portion of the prints, the quality was amazing. And so it's once I started designing my own parts that I was going to be assembling, and the height had to be accurate. And I was used to my other printer being within 10 thou, and this one was distorting to the degree where I thought it was me, that I was making a mistake on my models. And when I would double check, I'd be like, wow, the Z dimension is always bigger than it's supposed to be. But I also discovered that it definitely creates a very distinct line at around the 10mm mark on both of these parts, because the way they're sitting is the way that I printed them. And so I kept on looking at the Cura code, going like, okay, is something when I'm slicing it distorting this? And I could not find anything. So I was like, okay, I need to start looking at the firmware that's on the EEPROM. And that's when I discovered that the line M420, that's the bed leveling line, and it's set to default. So M420 S0 Z10 is the default on this printer, the way that I received it on the firmware. And I went, you know what? That line looks like it's approximately 10mm. What is this about? So I did some testing, and initially I thought that it was turning the bed leveling off at Z10, even though the S was set to 0. And it took a little bit of playing around and testing, etc., to discover that the bed leveling is the S, 0 turns it off, 1 turns it on. The fade function is the Z. You put a 0 into the Z, it turns the fade off. You can put values, I guess, up into the height of the actual printer's ability itself. I did not test it out. All I've done is I've tested on and off and at the 10mm mark, and I did it printing these test cubes. So I'd already done all the calibration for the machine with the fade turned off. So I've calibrated the filament feed. I've calibrated the stepper motors on the XYZ axis, and I had to change all of them. So I now print cubes that are 20mm by 20 by 20, very, very accurate down to the second decimal place in millimeters, which is incredible. The finish is dynamite. On the sides, I find flat surfaces never typically tend to finish well on any printer, in my opinion. I can be a little bit of a perfectionist at times. So Z set to 0, fade is off. Z set to 10, the fade is on. It's distorted the height, it's added a line, and it actually increased the dimensions on the X and Y axis simultaneously. God knows why. I don't know why. But if I turn it off, I go right back to the quality of this. So Z0, Z10, Z0, Z10. It's definitely repeatable. You cannot see it in this image, but up to that line, there's microscopic cracks in the structure of the cube. So this has 20% infill, so it's a cube. It's very, very strong. So not a huge deal other than the fact that how much it has distorted the height of this thing. So if you're designing parts for functionality, you're going to be way off base and you're going to be scratching your head why. God knows I did. So like I said, I mean, it's been a roller coaster ride of being excited because, wow, the quality of the prints are fantastic. And then very frustrating to the point where I had to take a break because I was getting obsessed and I was starting to get really pissed off. But thankfully, I discovered the issue. I've tested it. I've proved it. Now I'm sharing the information with you, hoping that it'll help you. I've decided for the moment, until I understand more about the fade functionality, or I can do more testing, that I am just going to leave it off and I'm going to turn on my bed leveling. If you want to learn how to do that, stick around. I got a video that I've made that I'll share with you that'll walk you through the steps. It is not complicated. It's very, very easy. Gives you the reference to the Marlin website for G-code commands. So if you want to try it, I learned it from YouTube, from others. I learned how to go in and use Pronterface from others in order to be able to change the firmware. But the discovery of that fade function, I discovered that all on my own, and it actually is on the Marlin website as well. It does not give you a lot of details to what is actually happening and why it's stretching out the z-axis. But let's get to my design here that I was working on. These pieces needed to fit together, and of course they were coming out taller than they're supposed to. I originally thought it was me, that I was making a mistake, and I'd review my work, only discovered no, my measurements were correct, my models are correct. It was indeed the printer. But I tend to print things with hollow walls because I don't need strength in here. I want to print my parts fast. I want to save filament and time. But what I did discover is that in this fade section here, where you can see that very distinct line, there's definitely, it's different on this lower portion. It's very soft, so it's easy for me to put my finger right through it. Like I just put my fingernail right through there. I just broke that off easily. But when you come up here, where it's properly set, I cannot put my fingernail through that. And I mean, I'm really applying some pressure here. So I just wanted you to see, it looks okay, but there's microscopic cracks all through it, So that was very easy for me to do. Frustrated me like crazy. But anyways, I'm really glad I got to the root cause of it. I'm glad I can share and hopefully help others to be able to have quality prints from this thing. Like I said, it was a roller coaster ride with this thing. I even at a certain point was starting to think about just ditching it. But I took a break, calmed down, came back to being strategic in my troubleshooting of this thing to try to get to the bottom of it. And now I'm really happy. I mean, I'm super happy. I'm excited. This thing can print fantastic quality. Here's a hand that, that I've shown in one of my other videos. And the camera never does it justice, but the finish on this thing is just absolutely incredible. And I've printed giant ones of these, and people are always excited. Wow, that's so cool. They want one, yada, yada. Anyways, if you want to learn how to be able to change the settings, stick around. I'll share that video. And I'm also going to share a small clip of a very simple little trick in order for you to be able to see with your eyes if your automatic bed leveling is actually functioning. And you can use a piece of painter's tape to find out. So before I show you how to be able to change the settings for the bed level and the fade functions in the firmware, I just wanted to share with you the commands that we're going to use in order to be able to update it, and to let you know that you can turn on the bed leveling and turn off the fade, or you can turn off the bed leveling and turn on the fade. But in my situation, until I understand more and I can do more tests, I am going to keep the bed leveling on, and I'm going to turn off the fade due to the fact that it distorts the height of whatever you're printing. In other words, the z-axis. So here we are on the Marlin website. The very first thing that we're going to do once we turned on pronter face is we're going to do the M503 command to find out what the settings are that are on the firmware, on the EEPROM. Once we've made our changes, then we're going to use the M500 command to save our settings. So you need to download pronter face. Once you download pronter face, it's going to have a little icon like this one. I hope you can see my cursor. I'm opening up pronter face. I've already connected the cable that I mentioned to my computer and to the printer, so it is installed. Now, pronter face is open here. You're going to have to set your port. I originally had to establish this port. Not something that I can help you with. It's not a strong point playing with ports. I had to do the YouTube thing to find out which port to connect to. Mine is COM3. Yours may be COM3, 1, 4, whatever. You're going to have to do that part yourself. But the connect button is right here. So I'm now connecting, and you can see over on the right hand side here, it says connecting, printer is now online. So there's a command bar. You're going to send commands to the printer. And so the first one that I'm going to do is M503. I want to know what the status is of the firmware on the EEPROM. So there we go. So it's just giving me a report of what is currently on that EEPROM. And if I scroll up, I'm looking for M420. So right here I see M420 S0Z10. So this is how the printer was defaulted when I received it. So I don't want the bed leveling off, and I don't want the fade on. So I just come down to the command line. I'm going to type M420 space capital S1 to turn on the bed leveling, space Z0. The 0 means that I'm turning off the fade. I hit enter, and now it sent the command to the printer. So it echoes here. Bed leveling is on, fade height is off. So I want to save now. So save is M500. So M500. I hit send. And I'm honestly surprised that you don't get a confirmation from it that it has received it and taken that instruction. So I always do an M503 right afterwards because I want to see that it actually took the commands. So here we go. So now if we scroll up, you're going to see that my bed leveling has been changed to M420 S1Z000. Okay, I skipped the decimal place in there. So this, what you're seeing right down here below, that is the readings from the automatic bed calibration when you activate it from the control panel on the printer. It will take those readings, and then it's going to store those readings into the EEPROM. So if you look at these dimensions, you're going to see that they're all pretty, they're going to be 5 point something up to just over 6. So here's 6.054. This is millimeters. So this is the distortion of the bed. You could take that information and you could graph it, and there's even websites out there that will give you a visual display. All you got to do is copy those numbers and paste them in appropriately, and it'll give you a visual of what your bed looks like. So I've already done that before. I already know that my bed is warped, and I'm going to call it banana because it has waves in it. I don't find the resolution of the readings very fine, so I'm assuming that they performed calculations between the points just to be able to have the print nozzle follow the wave in the bed, so to speak. So not super complicated, very easy to do. And the next little clip I'm going to share with you is an easy way for you to be able to know that your bed leveling is on and that it's functional. Before I knew it wasn't working when I first got this printer, so I was writing G code into the Cura slicer in order to be able to turn on and enable the auto bed leveling. And this is what all started my digging at this, to try to find out why the first 10 millimeters of my prints were always weak. I continually trying to get my Z offset set right, only to discover that this fade function, somehow it's weakening the filament that is being laid down for the first 10 millimeters, fading it out. So once I turned that off, all of that went away, and I found that my models were coming out much more accurate. They were much more stable at the base and solid, and very difficult to try to break with my fingernail. If you want to know if your bed leveling is actually working, I made a little pointer using painter's tape. I hope you can appreciate how expensive painter's tape is these days. It's crazy. But anyways, the point being extended like that will just amplify the movement. So the more warped your bed is when you're printing on the first layer, the more you're going to see that pointer move. So mine is only moving just a little bit, but of course, as you go farther out with bigger prints, you would see it move back and forth more on that first layer. That's a way to know that your bed leveling is actually working.